Rain hammered against the tall glass windows of Terminal 4 as Sarah Mitchell sat hunched in a plastic chair, her 6-year-old son Tommy asleep with his head on her lap. Her flight to Ohio had been delayed for the third time, and the last $20 in her purse had already gone toward a stale sandwich and a bottle of water for Tommy. She was 32 years old, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, and she was returning home, not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice. The eviction notice was still folded in her bag, crumpled from being read too many times. 2 months behind on rent. A job that had let her go when the diner cut hours. A son who deserved better than a mother running on fumes. She closed her eyes, trying not to think about how far she had fallen from the girl she used to be, the girl with dreams of nursing school, of a little house with a porch swing, of Daniel. Daniel Cole. She hadn't let herself think his name in years. Not since he left for California with nothing but a duffel bag and a promise to come back for her that never came true. That was 14 years ago. She had built walls around that memory, thick enough that even now, in her exhaustion, she almost didn't notice the tall man in the charcoal suit walking briskly through the terminal, phone pressed to his ear, 3 assistants trailing behind him like a small army. Almost. Something about the way he moved, the particular tilt of his head when he listened, the habit of running a hand through his hair when he was thinking hard, made her chest tighten. She looked up. And the world stopped. It was him. Older, sharper, dressed like something out of a magazine, but unmistakably him. Daniel Cole, the boy who used to walk her home from the diner where she waitressed after school, who used to write her silly poems on napkins, who used to promise her the world when neither of them had 2 nickels to rub together. Now the nameplate on the badge clipped to his assistant's folder read, Cole Aerospace Technologies, CEO Daniel R. Cole. Sarah's stomach dropped. She wanted to disappear into the plastic chair, to become invisible, because next to this powerful man in his tailored suit, she felt like exactly what she was, a broke single mother in a thrift store coat, her son's shoes held together with tape, her hands rough from years of dishwashing and diner work. She looked down quickly, praying he wouldn't see her. Praying harder that he would. But fate, as it often does at airports, had other plans. Tommy stirred in his sleep and knocked Sarah's phone off her lap. It clattered to the floor and skidded, right toward a pair of expensive leather shoes. Daniel bent down to pick it up before his assistant could. When he straightened, phone in hand, his eyes met hers. For a long moment, neither of them said a word. Sarah. His voice cracked slightly, the polished executive tone slipping for just a second, revealing the boy she used to know. Sarah Mitchell. She nodded, unable to speak, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. Hi, Daniel. 14 years. He didn't shake her hand. He didn't offer some cool, corporate greeting. He knelt right there on the airport floor, ignoring his assistant's confused glances, ignoring the businessmen stepping around him, and looked at her like no time had passed at all. I can't believe it's you, he said. I've thought about you every single year on your birthday. I never stopped, he caught himself, glancing at Tommy, then back at her. Is this your son? Tommy, she said softly. He just turned 6. Daniel smiled, and for a second the years fell away, and she saw the boy who used to sneak her free pie slices when his manager wasn't looking. He's beautiful. He's got your eyes. Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her own eyes and blinked them back hard. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of him, not after everything. What are you doing here? She asked, trying to steady her voice. I mean, obviously you're successful. I saw the badge. He let out a short, almost embarrassed laugh. Cole Aerospace. I started it 8 years ago with money I didn't have and a lot of luck. It's a long story. I have time, she said, gesturing at the departures board, where her flight now read delayed, indefinite. Apparently a lot of the truth comes out. They ended up in a quiet corner of an airport cafe, Tommy still curled asleep against his mother's side. Daniel ordered them both coffee and, without asking, a hot chocolate and a sandwich for when Tommy woke up. Small gestures. But Sarah noticed. She always noticed the small things. I looked for you, Daniel admitted, turning his cup slowly on the table. After my dad's company failed and we lost everything, I panicked. I thought if I left and made something of myself first, I could come back and actually offer you a life. I was 20 years old and stupid. I thought love could wait. Sarah's throat tightened. I waited 2 years, Daniel. I wrote you letters. I called your old number until it was disconnected. Then I just stopped. I moved so many times chasing investors and jobs, I lost your number too, he said, guilt washing over his face. I told myself once I made it, I'd track you down. But years pass faster than you think when you're building something from nothing. And then I heard you'd married someone. I did, Sarah said quietly. It didn't last. He left when Tommy was 2. Said fatherhood wasn't for him. She wrapped her hands tighter around her coffee cup. Since then it's just been me and Tommy. 2 jobs when I can get them. 1 when I can't. Daniel's jaw tightened, something fierce and protective flashing in his eyes, the same look he used to get in high school when bullies picked on smaller kids. Sarah, why didn't you reach out? My company's all over the news. I'm not exactly hiding. Because, she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them, the last thing I wanted was for you to see me like this. Broke. Struggling. A single mom running from an eviction notice. You left to build an empire, Daniel. I stayed and barely built a life. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest in a way neither of them expected. Daniel reached across the table, hesitated, then gently placed his hand over hers. Sarah, do you have any idea how many nights I wondered if I made the biggest mistake of my life leaving you behind? Money doesn't erase that. It just gave me the resources to fix it, if you'll let me. I don't need charity, she said quickly, pulling her hand back, pride flaring despite the exhaustion in her bones. It's not charity, he said firmly. It's about a promise I made 14 years ago that I never got the chance to keep. Come work with me. Not as charity, as a colleague. My company needs a head of community outreach, someone who understands what real families actually need, not some out-of-touch executive who's never struggled a day in his life. You'd be perfect for it. Sarah stared at him, stunned. You don't even know if I'm qualified. You survived 14 years of single motherhood with no support system, no safety net, and you still managed to raise a kind, healthy little boy, Daniel said, glancing tenderly at sleeping Tommy. That's more qualification than any MBA could give you. Tears finally slipped down Sarah's cheeks, the ones she'd been holding back for years, not just minutes. The delayed flight never took off that night. Instead, Daniel arranged a hotel room for Sarah and Tommy, had his driver bring their luggage, and promised to meet her again the next morning, not as the CEO of a billion-dollar aerospace company, but as the boy who once wrote her poems on diner napkins. Word spread quickly, as it does in small towns and big companies alike. Employees at Cole Aerospace whispered about their notoriously private CEO showing up personally to help a woman move her son into a new school near the company's headquarters. Reporters caught wind of the story and ran headlines about the Billionaire's airport reunion, but Daniel refused every interview, saying only, some things are too sacred for the press. Sarah started her new job 3 weeks later. It wasn't a fairy tale overnight transformation. She still worked hard, still learned everything from the ground up, still insisted on paying her own way for the small apartment near Tommy's new school rather than accepting Daniel's offer to cover it outright. Her pride mattered to her. But slowly, the weight she had carried alone for so long began to lift, shared now with someone who remembered who she was before life got so hard. Daniel made a point of coming to every one of Tommy's school events, standing quietly in the back at first, not wanting to overstep, but always there. Tommy, who had never really known a father figure, started calling him Mr. Daniel, and then, eventually, just Daniel, with the easy trust only children have. Not everything was smooth. Daniel's board of directors raised eyebrows at his sudden personal involvement with an employee, whispering about favoritism and scandal. An ambitious VP named Bradley Simmons, who had hoped to marry into Daniel's fortune through his own sister, tried to plant rumors that Sarah was a gold digger who had orchestrated the airport meeting. Sarah, for the first time in years, didn't shrink from a fight. She walked into the boardroom herself, laid out her employment records, her outreach program's results, a 40% increase in community engagement in her first 2 months, and looked every single board member in the eye. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said, voice steady despite her racing heart. "I asked for nothing but a delayed flight and a moment of peace. What Daniel and I have isn't about money. It's about two people who lost each other once and aren't willing to lose each other twice. If that threatens this company, then maybe this company has bigger problems than me." The room fell silent. Then, one by one, board members began to nod. Even Bradley Simmons found himself outvoted and quietly reassigned. 6 months after that rainy night at the airport, Daniel invited Sarah and Tommy to the grand opening of Cole Aerospace's new community center, the one Sarah herself had designed, built specifically for underprivileged single-parent families, offering job training, childcare, and financial literacy classes. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, in front of employees, reporters, and a crowd of families the program had already helped, Daniel took the microphone. 14 years ago, I made a mistake," he said, his eyes finding Sarah in the crowd. "I chose ambition over love, thinking I could have both later. Life doesn't always give you a later. But sometimes, if you're lucky, if you're really, truly lucky, it gives you a delayed flight." The crowd laughed softly, and Sarah felt her cheeks flush as every eye turned to her. "Sarah Mitchell taught me that the measure of a person isn't their bank account. It's what they build with what little they're given, and how they keep loving even when love has let them down before." He reached into his jacket pocket. "So today, I'm not just opening a community center." He walked down from the small stage, dropped to one knee in front of a stunned Sarah and a wide-eyed Tommy, and opened a small velvet box. "Sarah, I don't want another 14 years to pass without asking you properly. Will you marry me, and let me be the father Tommy deserves?" The airport terminal where they had reunited months earlier had seen thousands of goodbyes and hellos, but nothing quite like the video that went viral within hours. Sarah Mitchell, tears streaming down her face, nodding through her sobs while her son jumped up and down shouting, "Say yes, Mom. Say yes." "Yes," she whispered, then louder, laughing through her tears, "Yes, Daniel. 1,000 times yes." The crowd erupted into applause. Employees who had once doubted their CEO's judgment now understood, some stories aren't written in boardrooms or bank statements. They're written in delayed flights, dropped phones, and second chances nobody thought they'd get. Epilogue, 1 year later. Sarah Cole, she still wasn't quite used to the sound of her new last name, stood on the porch of their new home, watching Tommy chase fireflies in the backyard while Daniel grilled burgers nearby, sleeves rolled up, looking nothing like the polished CEO from magazine covers and everything like the boy she fell in love with all those years ago. Her outreach program had expanded to 12 cities. She had personally helped over 300 single parents find stable jobs, safe housing, and a support system they never had. And every single day, she reminded herself of the lesson that changed her life. Sometimes the best thing that ever happens to you looks, at first, like the worst possible timing, a stranded flight, an empty wallet, a chance encounter you never saw coming. But if you stay strong long enough, if you keep showing up for the people who need you most, life has a way of circling back, and giving you everything you thought you'd lost, and so much more than you ever dared to dream.